And most people, if you do a handstand in front of someone, they're going to be like, wow, that's incredible. They're not going to go like, dude, terrible form. Like, that's just the 1%.
Imagine you're in public, you're at a calisthenics park, you're really proud, you got your phone out, you're filming yourself. Oh yeah, got my first handstand. Some dude strolls past, he's like, oh, sorry, I couldn't help but see that you're quite arched there.
Yeah, exactly,
no one's going to do that.
It's an awkward shape. Like, you're going to be in these funny positions. And
sorry, honey, I can't lift our newborn without using a perfectly neutral spine, hip hinge. Exactly. You're going to have to do it for me.
Yeah, exactly. And I knew my parkour friend who taught me this would be like rolling in his grave. He's not dead. Don't know why I used that expression. Rolling in his...
Well, that's always a good start to this story.
You know what? Having a dance, this is a hack. Put on some really good music whilst you're cleaning the kitchen. It's such a good way of like... And have a bop. It's a really good way
Adam,
to get your
I'm going to need
again.
a YouTube video of the optimal technique, the benefits of how to dance correctly for men over 30. Calisthenics will change your life. How do bodyweight exercises transform your body?
Yeah. Oh, so yeah, that was the title of a recent video I did, and I massively believe it because obviously, as someone who's dabbled in a lot of different training modalities, I think I included an interview clip from an interview with Tom Merrick there as well. Where he said, like, if you could only do one, if you had to only do one, which one did you pick? And I said calisthenics. And it's partly because to me, like, I love the aesthetics of it. Like, handstands are cool. You just feel particularly superhuman doing good calisthenics. But it's also the fact that, like, to do a handstand, you got to have good shoulder mobility. You got to have good wrist mobility. You've got to control your core. You've got to think about where your legs are upside down. And you're building, like, so much awareness. Like, really, you see all these tips on how to do handstands and stuff, but really... the most important thing is just hours and hours of doing them, isn't it? Because you learn to adjust your hand, but you're not thinking about it. And the same with planche. Like, I always say, learning the planche is a journey. Like, I can't planche yet. I think I can now do a straddle planche for like literally 1 second. I know I'm holding it. It doesn't look like anything, but I know I'm holding it, which is brilliant. So that's the tiny bit of progress. But like, just to get to that point, like, no one trains straight arm strength until they start doing calisthenics. And like, the stimulus on the shoulder is so different from anything else you get when you're leaning forwards like that, and the core control and like breathing is massive in planche. I don't know about you starting out. I used to come away, I'd have all these like blood vessels burst. I'd have all these pinpricks, bloods on my face where I've been doing it. Like, it's so different, and you can't brute force it. That's the thing. Like, when I started out with bodybuilding, you can, like, obviously it's better if you use good form, but you can get good results curling with atrocious form. You're benching you just lie underneath it and push. Like, obviously there are tips depending on whether you want to do a powerlifting one, retract your shoulder blades, whatever, but you can just lie under it and push, and you can get extremely far like that without ever giving it any thought. But calisthenics, if you want to do those advanced moves, you have to learn your body, and like, that's just a whole different, like, that's what so many people, I think, I mean, to me, I'm fascinated with this stuff. It doesn't appeal to everyone, but I think almost everyone could benefit from it. Just things like thinking about your pelvic alignment. Like, again, for a planche, you can't be having like a sort of banana back. It's cheating. You don't think about these things, and that's just like, it improves your movement throughout everything else you do and your body awareness. So yeah, I genuinely think it's fantastic. And then obviously you have all the more basic stuff like push-ups and pull-ups, and they're just your go-to bread and butter way that you can build strength and good strength to weight ratio anywhere. So yeah, it's got it all really, in my opinion.
It's the fact that you can't just change the weight on the movement to make it easier, which is the complexity where people starting calisthenics like, oh, this is too hard, too complicated, it's not for me. But with some basic research, you understand that we can use bands to offload our body weight. We can use regressed body postures. So instead of doing that full planche with the body fully extended or full front lever, body extended, like the beast we see on social media, us mere mortals starting out as beginners can start with a band and a tuck posture, and everyone listening can start at that point.
Yeah, right. Yeah, there's so many easier regressions. I think the tricky thing is, with bands, it's like setting it up, isn't it? And like, finding that anchor above you to then hang from. And then so the obvious alternative is something like, using a wall to assist you, or putting your legs on something and just touching your feet as lightly as you can on a sofa if you're doing something like a planche, or like you say, tucking your knees, doing a tuck planche. But then I think the problem there is, obviously with weights, you can micro dose, can't you? You can add like a 5 kilogram, you can have 1.5 kilograms, whereas just going from like push-ups on your knees to push-ups is like quite a big jump. So I think a lot of people would struggle to do push-ups, but find push-ups on their knees too easy, or will find that the transition from one to the other is, and again, there's ways you can mitigate that, aren't there? You can do push-ups on gradually elevated surfaces, declined surfaces. But yeah, again, there's a lot more thought that goes into it, isn't there? Which is not a bad thing, because like we say, that's an education in itself, and it really teaches you to know yourself. And that's the other thing with calisthenics is you, like I say, can't brute force it. You also can't rush it, can you? You have to do the kind of boring, unimpressive stuff. And that's such a good lesson to learn. Like, it's humbling. Like for me, because I just was always quite strong, and like, I could bench at my peak, I could do 150 kilogram bench, which is like double body weight for me. But then to go from that to be like, I'm gonna have to, if I want to learn to planche, I'm gonna have to just literally hold this crow pose with like the arms straight. And it feels like nothing, but you have to really humble yourself and go back to basics. And I would try and push and get there faster, hurt your elbow. I'm sure everybody's been there. It's like, no, if you want to actually do this, you have to just, it's going to take you years and years and years. And then like as a creator, like we like to share what we're doing, I think it's a really important message to put out there. Like I try and show people like my handstand's falling over all the time. Like I can do a handstand, perfectly. When I say perfectly, it's still a bit banana-y, but as in hold it really nice and steady 50% of the time. I can do like a handstand push-up 25% of the time, 2 in a row 5% of the time, and then you want to be perfect, especially as someone who's sharing your stuff online. But I think it's so important that people see, like, I think a lot of people who gain calisthenic skills, like you say, a skill unlocked, but it's not really like that, is it? It's not like you got it and now you've got it forever. It's like you've got it and then tomorrow you're worse than you were like a week ago. So, which is so frustrating. I was filming yesterday and we're doing loads of handstands, and it was really annoying because I got there before my videographer was trying to get some footage. I tried to do these handstand push-ups. I did 2 of them in front of a really cool backdrop, didn't record properly, and then he comes and I can't do them anymore because that's life, I guess.
Video, or it didn't happen.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. And then he was like trying to get me to do a handstand on this bridge. It was in a beautiful Japanese garden. It should be so easy, but it's a slightly round bridge. And he's watching, and he's Liam Ellis. He's an incredible parkour athlete, so he also can do all this stuff to a high degree. And he's like, "Come on, Adam, you can do a handstand." I'm like, "I can't. It's not working for me today." That's just the way it goes.
There's a lot of variables there with calisthenics. You've got that technique, skill component, which is just so much more demanding when you've got the balance of a handstand, the strength component of the handstand, and just the variability of your recovery day to day, like with all resistance training. But then there's the influence of body weight on performance, which relative strength in calisthenics is everything. It's like pound for pound, how strong you are at moving your body. So an interesting little hack that I got from someone to accurately train calisthenics and know where you are on a given day is to weigh yourself before you're about to do your session. Because if you do a set of pull-ups earlier in the week and you weigh, say, 75 kilos, and then the next time you go for a pull-up workout, the previous night, you went out with family and friends, you had a Chinese buffet, you've loaded up on that sodium, MSG, you're suddenly 2.5 kilos more. Your performance is going to be severely affected on calisthenics compared to just lifting weights.
Well, that's genius. Yeah. It seems so obvious when you say it. Like, obviously, it's like you are the weight, so you need to know what you're lifting, don't you?
Yeah. I mean, I came across this from a elite street lifter named Matthew Zlat, one of the best in the world at weighted dips, pull-ups. And like you, that was an epiphany. It is so obvious, but I've been training for 15 years and I didn't think of that.
Yeah. No, I'd never thought of it either. The other thing with calisthenics is like going back to holding a handstand is like, because so much of it's so skill based, it's also very mental. So like you get in your own head, and say on a shoot when you've only got a certain amount of time to get the shot or something, and like there's a nice backdrop and there's noise and you got to do it when the noise isn't on, whatever else. Like trying to get that. It's like in golf I think they call it the yips, don't they? Where you can get in your own head and then you get worse and worse. The more angry and frustrated you get, the worse you get. Like there comes a point where if I'm trying to pull up a cool calisthenics move and like I haven't got it after a certain point, I'm like, you need to walk away and come back. Again, that's not going to happen with curls. You never go like, oh, I've got curl anxiety.
No,
but with a handstand, you need to be in the right headspace, don't you? Because obviously you can't focus. Something that's really interesting about it is the role of working memory. You know much about working memory?
Yeah, it's about building that proficiency and like those motor patterns, the neural networks and stuff.
Oh, well, so for working memory, it's really about the amount of data you can store in your head at a given time. So if I was to tell you a phone number and you have to remember that to go and write it down, that's your working memory. And, they say in terms of numbers, I think it's 7 plus or minus 2. So a really good working memory would be 9 digits.
It's about the number of a phone number to remember that amount of digits.
Roughly. Yeah, but obviously working memory also applies to everything else, like your visual spatial awareness, like your ability to know what's in the room behind you without looking. If you're in a room you're not familiar with, that's your working memory. If you're playing football and you're thinking, where are the other players on the pitch? That's your working memory. And when it comes to skill acquisition, this actually has a huge role again, because like, for example, I'm trying to improve my martial arts technique and my punching. And I know all these cues, like I've got to relax my shoulders. I've got to whip from the hip first. I've got to pull back as quickly as I push out, keep my guard up, all these things. Until they become ingrained, until they become automatic, you actually have to be thinking about every single thing. And every time, like filming yourself and watching it back is crucial, because it's the only way you notice. So you throw the punch, that felt good. And you watch it, I closed my eyes on impact, right? Remember to keep your eyes open, right? Throw again. Oh, I dropped my guard, right? Remember to keep my eyes open and keep my guard up. Like, again, it's so mental. And they've shown that people who have a better working memory actually acquire skills. I think the study I saw was done on basketball players. I think it was, young kids learning basketball, and the ones with a better working memory were learning the new skills quicker, because they were able to juggle all that information and awareness of the body, which, so it's not only having the proprioception, it's also being able to attend to the proprioception and to remember all those cues and things you've been told.
What's interesting about that in application, people hear this and think, okay, when I'm doing a handstand, I need to think of everything while I'm doing it. Okay, I need to have my elbows straight, shrug my shoulders up, I need to control my pelvis. But in reality, you can only really focus on one cue at a time. Otherwise, it's just overwhelming for you to process and manage that in real time. So learning just becomes a matter of having something in your mind's eye at the time until that becomes something that you don't struggle with, and then you move on to the next thing. And then before you know it, when you're doing a handstand, you're just focusing more on an outcome focus. I'm just pushing tall. I'm not thinking of my scapula, my pelvis, elbows, wrists, etc.
Yeah, and that's a really good tip as well, having like a visualization that kind of automatically encompasses a lot of those things. Like, for the punching, they say whip like a towel and punch through the bag. That kind of takes care of a lot of the stuff. Now you're straightening your arms, now you're whipping your hips. And that's in when you're trying to memorize numbers using your working memory, you use something called chunking, which basically says instead of remembering like 5, 4, 2, 1, you're remembering 5,421. That's one number now. That's one thing you're remembering. And it's the same thing, when you use a cue like that, like, try and imagine that you're throwing the bar when you do a bench press. That's like enough. That's like chunking all that information into one visualization, so it helps you to remember it. But also breaking down something like a complex skill into lots of smaller component parts is really useful. Not so much from the memory perspective, but from what, for me personally, a big issue I was having was underbalancing on the handstand. Basically, everyone's always like, oh, learn to cartwheel out of a handstand, and I can cartwheel out of a handstand, but I always practice in my living room where there's just toys and kitchen everywhere. So you have toy kitchen, like there's just no space to cartwhile out of a handstand.
That's when you know you're a parent right there.
I know. Like, it's not even because this is when it's tidy. There's still just no space. When I fall out of a handstand, what I actually do is I step forwards hard on this hand. It's just my automatic reflex, which catches me. But I've got a bad wrist that I broke, which kind of creates this. So what I'd always do is underbalance, like to compensate for the overbalancing. But I've been using a tip I think I got from watching your channel, and I think I credited you recently in my pike push-ups
FAQs,
video. Yeah.
Let's go, boys.
Yeah. It was the pike liftoffs. That was you, right? So you go down into the lower pike position and just raise your legs. They've been fantastic for me because they're teaching me that underbalance position. Like, it's like if I can hold it there, then of course I can catch myself when I underbalance in a handstand.
Yeah.
So now I just need the equivalent for the overbalance. But just focusing on that one element that was wrong. And I've also been working a lot on shoulder mobility. But breaking it down into, like, you can't fix everything all at once. So what are we going to work on?
That's the biggest mistake people make when learning a handstand, is rushing the process and trying to just do the handstand as a whole. When you're first learning, it is so important to break it down into those components. We've got the kick up, which is a skill, trying to even just put your hands on the ground and lift the legs up to even get inverted. That's one component. Then we have just actual equilibrium, which is being upside down in a handstand where your joints are stacked, your center of mass is over your base support, and you've got that control. What we just spoke about there was in the handstand, you're either going to underbalance and fall down towards your feet, or you're going to overbalance and fall over the top and have to cartwheel. The great strategies that you can use for overbalance control is practicing back to wall handstands. Now, before everyone gets scared and says, geez, not back to wall, it's going to have the banana back, it's going to teach bad habits. When we do this drill, if we do a back to wall handstand and we just practice doing heel pulls is what it's called. You try and pull your heels off the wall, get up into the handstand balance, and you let your heels drop back against the wall. You'll actually strengthen your fingers and forearms so that when you kick up into a handstand and you're going to overbalance, you'll have the capacity and the strength to be able to save it. And then the reverse of that, which you just said, is the underbalance component. You can do a very similar drill facing chest to wall handstand. Those ones are called toe pulls. So you can imagine you lean forward, you almost plant your shoulders a bit, toes come off the wall, you correct it back into handstand, rinse and repeat. When you first start out, you'll just be coming off the wall repeatedly, but then you'll eventually be able to hold balance, and it's just a great way of isolating the handstand in that respect.
Yeah. So that is, I think I need to do more of the back to wall ones. I do the back to wall ones, but I probably allow myself a bit too much bananaing. And the problem is once you go too far banana, then you're gone. Although what I found as a way of bailing out of that position is to just to hinge the hips to lower my legs straight, and then I start underbalancing, and then I can straighten them again and catch it. But it's it's pushing the fingers, isn't it? Which is that's the big overbalancing.
Other big takeaway for the handstand is just having a really good capacity of holding a handstand against the wall. Most people that are starting handstands can't even hold a wall handstand for 30 seconds, and they're trying to do kick-ups and hold the handstand, which is just a fool's errand there. Build yourself up to doing 1+ minute chest to wall handstand or back to wall handstand hold, and it's going to be so much easier to hold freestanding balance for like 15-20 seconds.
And also again, because you're obviously breaking it down and everything, but it is also just like you say, just having the time. Because say all of the little adjustments happen in your forearm, you're not controlling those. That's just pure muscle memory. So you need to put the time in, don't you? Thing is, because I hate kicking up. So what I was doing a lot of the time until more recently was I was always doing, it's the bent arm press to handstand. That's how I'd get into the handstand instead of kicking up, because then I've just got more control and I had the strength. But then that meant I was already tired before I would attempt my handstand push-ups.
You probably took 15-20 seconds off your handstand hold by doing that bent arm press.
That's the problem. So I'm like, look, if you're going to be doing multiple handstand push-ups, you need to start kicking up properly. So I've been working on that more now. I mean, it looks and feels cool doing the bent arm to handstand, but then that's already one handstand push-up. So seeing as I've got about 3 in me max, then I'm not going to be doing.
Yeah. Oh man, Adam, your homework is definitely practicing kick-ups to handstand without even trying to balance the handstand. 50 reps in a handstand workout. Finishing your handstand workout with maximum holds, chest to wall, trying to do 1.5, 2 minutes, and also combine that with those heel and toe pulls. So I'd do heel and toe pulls to practice underbalance, overbalance control with the wall. Then I would do your kick up to handstand, because it's a skill. You want to be still fresh to do that. And then just put in the time holding that handstand, and it'll be a joke for you.
Nice. All right, I'll do that. Thank you.
Simple,
I'm
but not easy.
I'm putting a lot more emphasis on the handstands at the moment, because it's always hard, isn't it? It's with calisthenics as well. You want to chase all the skills at once because they're all cool. But I think for me, handstand has always been I've always been a fan of it. So.
Do you have any tips for people to focus their effort? Because there is so many things we can do with calisthenics. What is the sweet spot of number of things to work on at any one time?
To be honest, I think it just depends on your individual goals, because I've always been I'm probably the wrong person to ask, because I'm very scattershot, one of those sort of do as I suggest, not as I do, because
I don't have the best track record either, so I feel a bit hypocritical.
Yeah, exactly. So because I'll be like, right, I want to focus all my effort on handstands. I'm gonna lean out, and I'm gonna work on the mobility, and I'm gonna put my workouts will be mainly handstand drills. And then 2 weeks
do
later,
what Daniel said from Fitness FAQs.
Exactly. And then I'll be like, my biceps are looking a bit small. I might do a bit more bodybuilding again. And then I'm like, right, well, now you've just gone back to bodybuilding, and then I'll see, I'm keep getting out of breath. I need to do more cardio. But the thing is, having that approach, I have made progress in all the areas, and it's just really slow. So it depends on whether you want to make a lot of progress quickly, or whether you want to, because for me, that's always been what I'm interested in is having that mixture of things. Like at the moment, like I'm not spectacular in any one area. Like, my handstands are better than your average Joe, but like compared to yours, they're terrible. And then
me compared to a world-class hand balancer, it is also the same. There's levels to the game at every
you're
point.
Always going to compare yourself, yeah. But then I can do a couple of handstand push-ups on a good day, and bench like 130 kilograms and do a 10k run, and I like that. Like that's like it doesn't look good on Instagram because no one of those things is very impressive. But being able to do all of them just means you're ready for more situations. But with that said, specializing for a period of time is a very good idea. And if you want to get better, I mean, a lot of people say to focus on like a push skill, a pull skill, and a leg skill. I think that's a pretty fair, like if skills training is your interest. But I think as well, you can like focus on skills that are going to unlock a lot of other skills. Like if you want to get maximum bang for your buck, like doing something like a handstand, I think is so good because, you're learning so much from that. It's going to be much quicker to learn, obviously anything that builds off of that, like a handstand push-up, but even things like a planche will be easier once you've learned to keep your arms straight and control your torso and things. So like, yeah, I mean, if you want to learn something like a front lever's super cool, but like you're not going to learn as much from it right away because like you need to be in like you need to have the bar which has space for you to do a front lever. And I mean, you're going to be building amazing core strength, which will translate to a bunch of other stuff. But just, if you're starting out, maybe start with things that are going to then like more easily branch off into 100 other areas, so that you can then, because I think a handstand, like just being able to balance on your hands, that opens up a bunch of stuff, doesn't it? And it turns your body into a gym essentially. So yeah, that'd probably be my advice. But personally, I'm the wrong person to ask because, say I enjoy dabbling in everything, and I've tried to like just take my ego out of my training more lately. Like I think you have a tendency to always focus on the thing that you're good at and that you want to. So like for me, the bench press was what I naturally was very good at. And so I was always just doing more and more bench press, but I don't actually really like the bench press. As in, I enjoyed doing it, but to me, it was never as cool as doing a handstand push-up. And I'm like, why am I spending so much time on the bench press?
Confessions of a former gym rat.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it's you get in the camaraderie, you got a gym buddy, you go and it's so easy, isn't it, to progress there? But it's so simple. Like, obviously, it's not easy, but you know what I mean? It's so straightforward. You know what you got to do. You go in there day in and day out. And so, like, if you feel like you're not making the progress you want to in another area, falling back on something you're already good at is just so tempting. But it's about really, and there's nothing wrong with having an amazing bench press. If that's your goal, then fantastic. It's just really knowing yourself and what you want. And that might mean that you don't make a ton of progress for a while because, and that, again, to do that, you have to take your ego out of it. And it's that external validation, especially in the days of the internet. You upload things, people say, that's fantastic. But you see all these other people doing incredible things. But I don't think the goal should be to do incredible things, because the amount of sacrifice you have to do incredible things means that you're going to lose out in so many other areas. Like if you can do a one-handed handstand and sort of splay your legs apart and stand there for ages, like it's incredible. But those people, most of them, that's going to be such a focus of their training for so long, and you have to really say, am I willing to sacrifice so much else to get to that point? Like you can't be massively strong and do that, and you can't, you're going to have injuries and setbacks. And so, yeah, I mean, again, I think that's fantastic. I love seeing the limits of what the human body can do. But to get to the point where you're exceptional, you really have to specialize. And I think a lot of people don't recognize how much you have to sacrifice to do that. The top level bodybuilders, the top level powerlifters, they'll be carrying so much muscle mass. That's detrimental to them. They'll probably have limited mobility in other areas. So again, it's obviously don't, not always, but don't compromise your goals. I'm not saying don't have big ambitions. I'm just saying really think about what you actually want. Are you willing to sacrifice so many other things? It's I want to be able to do this awesome thing. I want to have a 500-pound deadlift. But it's but would you want that more than also having really good cardio, and are you willing to, and I'm not saying you can't do both, I'm just saying that in terms of like practicality for most people and getting there in a decent time frame, you have to kind of really choose whether you want to specialize and be incredible or whether you want to spread yourself a bit thinner and maybe not stand out as much, but have a better like range of tools.
Yeah, there's definitely diminishing returns when it comes to that specialization from a effort as well as time perspective. And the majority of people watching and listening to this want to be pretty good at a lot of things, to be well-rounded. When it comes to mixing disciplines, doing strength training with weights and calisthenics, but also doing some cardio, how do we find that minimum effective dose to still see progress?
Yeah, well, I think, again, like it can be useful for that reason, to spend some time like making one thing your focus a bit more, because a lot of it comes down to experience. Like for me, I know that I can maintain like quite a good physique really on like 1 or 2 relatively quick sessions per week, just because I've learned so much like what stimulus I'm looking for. And like I've already built a certain level of strength, so I'm lifting more. So, and for me, often it's more about maintaining things like muscle mass rather than having a big goal to. But I do these gauntlet sets for my biceps, for example, where I'm basically I do these big drop sets, but where I'm using mechanical drop sets, switching up the weight, and I go way, way, way beyond failure. I'm not recommending this to most people, and I only need to do that. Like this is basically, high intensity training. So I can get this massive stimulus and then I don't really need to do anything else for my biceps and they'll stay big. But for someone starting out trying to get big biceps, that's a different story, because they don't have the experience. And if I'm back in the day before I had experience as a personal trainer, I got someone to do that and they tore their bicep tendon.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. It was a mate when I was at uni. And I like, some people don't show real struggle in their face as much as others. So I'm like, come on, you got some more, you're not trying. And he's like, I don't know, Adam. I'm like, come on, you can do it. And then the next day he's like, I can't really bend my arm. And I'm like, great sign. And then like a week later he's like, I still can't bend my arm. I'm like, see a doctor. And I'm very
That's
sorry.
called maximum stimulus right there. I can't even feel my bicep anymore.
Exactly. Like I kind of, I say he didn't show any sign that he was that fatigued. But the point is, what's appropriate for me is a much smaller dose than what's appropriate for someone who's just starting out. So I think you want to start off with fairly simple, straightforward goals so that you can start seeing that progress and see what works for you, and then add things in and try stuff out. Like, I think a really good starting point for a lot of people is a very basic calisthenics program, just push-ups, pull-ups, air squats, something like that. And then from there, you can start to say, well, what's responding, what's not, where do I want to, add a bit more. So you really need to build a foundation in order to get to the point where you can juggle lots of things together. But, you can start seeing progress fairly quickly. And to start with, doing a body weight workout will also give you cardio and probably also some mobility if you're not used to squatting at all. So, I would say don't worry about that too much right at the start, and then start like adding in things and seeing what's working. Like you have to start listening to your body, because I can really tell if I've given myself the right stimulus. But that only comes really with experience, and it's quite individual as well, I think. So,
and it's also determining your level of experience and advancement in any of those one domains. So if you've been doing calisthenics for a while, you can do less volume in terms of less sets, probably less intensity relative to your maximum hold or proximity to failure. Whereas if you are starting something completely new, you don't have to do as much to get the return. Say you've never done cardio before, you can get away with so little as well in that respect. But if you were to try and progress in the one that you have a lot of experience with, you'd have to do like so many sets on your calisthenics or so many sets on your weights, if that's something you got experience with.
Yeah, exactly. Well, because you start to get diminishing returns with anything. But once you get to that point, like with something like calisthenics, what you might want to do is more maybe explore a new movement or just sort of refine your technique. And that's where you can see a kind of bigger step change still at a higher level is when you're sort of less focused on changing your body and more focused on like, oh, if I do it this way, then actually, sort of unlocking those ideas as much as just, I say a lot of it, so much of it is mental, like you saying, like learning, for example, the roll of the fingers or doing the pike lift-offs. That represented a bit of a step change for me in terms of my handstands, even though not much has changed in terms of my strength or my which would take a long time now to add much at all to. So yeah, at that point you can sort of make massive gains by exploring ideas as much as anything else, which is one of the reasons, again, that I really like trying different things and reading and learning, because, you know, they say the big changes often come from just like, oh, I could do it that way. And then, you know, suddenly it's like I heard, do your kick up slightly more to the side so that the momentum isn't going to carry you as much over your hands, and then catch it that way. I mean, that's something that made a bit of a difference for me and helped my kick up, but nothing changed for me.
It's wild how a slight variation of the same movement pattern can yield significant results. Case in point, you're plateauing with your pike push-ups or your handstand push-ups. You've been grinding at those for some time. Why not do an overhead press with a barbell or a dumbbell just to increase that just brute force strength and play with that pattern for a while, progressively overload it. You'll come back to your calisthenics and it'll be a night and day difference. That was a personal experiment that I ran because I was like, I'm just not progressing. I'm doing my, you know, deficit pike push-ups, my floor handstand push-ups against the wall, and it's just really stagnating. And then I just put in some military press for 2 months, came back without even doing the calisthenics movements, which blew my mind because like we have this FOMO that if we don't do the skills, we're going to lose them. But if you're training the muscles involved in the exercise, granted it's, you know, weights, not calisthenics, there is some loss of the skill specificity in the technique and stuff. Your muscles are being trained. You're doing it with low rep ranges, so you're building strength. You go back and teach your body how to do that on the exercise, handstand push-ups, you'll profit with it as well.
Yeah, well, skills actually do stick around quite a long time. In my personal experience, you know, this saying is like, it's like riding a bike, because that's a skill that's ingrained. I used to play the piano, and I, you know, learned a bunch of different songs, and I haven't played it for like over a decade, and I can still play some of those songs just from the muscle memory in my fingers. So yeah, in terms of like, you might be a bit rusty, but I think in terms of like finding the balance point and you know, the sort of reflexes, you're still going to have so much of that still there, and adding strength can only help. And I found the same thing, because I used to have more of a strength focus, and then I was actually able to do handstand push-ups back then with like a really short range of motion and terrible form, just from the strength, and because I practiced a little bit, because I always thought it was cool, like I say. But then I focused more on getting the technique right, like a straighter back and etc. And now I could do a better handstand push-up, but possibly actually fewer of them and a little less stable. And so then, because I was not as strong, so then you go back and do some strength, and then you get it. So yeah, in that sense, like you do kind of want both. And yeah, just being strong can make up for a lot of stuff as much as
technique is a fascinating topic in calisthenics, because it's often a aesthetic determinant that we've come up with. Hollow body, ribs down for handstand push-ups and stuff. But if you were tasked with performing as many handstand push-ups as you can, your body always finds the path of least resistance. It's where it's most mechanically advantageous. So by you arching the back, it shortens levers and it makes the exercise easier. So what you've just described there is that you got weaker because you made the movement harder.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and technically more efficient as well, because when you're balancing correctly, it's not a strength movement. So, you know, joint stacked. So
but then it's all foreign to your body. So there's a lot going on here with calisthenics.
Yeah, that's it. Yes, it's unfortunately it's not simple, and every case I think is going to be so different, and that's why you got to be really careful giving like blanket advice, because yeah, I think a lot of what I've said has been just sort of not straightforward answers, but it's not straightforward, is it? Unfortunately, and then you also again have to think what you want, because like really good like some people are pushing back, aren't they, and saying like there's nothing wrong with a banana handstand. That's how they used to do it back in the day. You know, look at the old time strongmen wowing the crowd. And most people, if you do a handstand in front of someone, they're going to be like, wow, that's incredible. They're not going to go like, dude, terrible form. Like that's just the 1%.
Imagine you're in public, you're at a calisthenics park, you're really proud, you got your phone out, you're filming yourself. Oh yeah, got my first handstand. Some dude strolls past, he's like, oh, sorry, I couldn't help but see that you're quite arched there.
Yeah, exactly,
no one's going to do that.
I did it. My friend's kid was like, oh, can he walk on his hands? And walking on his hands is something I can do pretty confidently. And I'm like, yeah, and I knew it wasn't great, but she's like, wow. So like, she doesn't care that it had a banana back on it. But, at the same time, like you say, in some ways it's more efficient. Like I was climbing over a wall the other day, and I was I know how to do a proper parkour climb up now. And one of the things you're supposed to do is like when you push yourself up, your legs come through your hands, a bit like a Kong vault. And I sort of put my legs to the side, more like a side vault. And I knew my parkour friend who taught me this would be like rolling in his grave. But at the same time, in terms of efficient movement, in that scenario, he's not dead. Don't know why I used that expression. Rolling in his,
Well, that's always a good start to this story.
rolling in his bed. So I did a side vault, but in that scenario, the wall was really crumbly and unsafe. And actually, I was like, well, in most scenarios, actually, this would be the safer and quicker way to get over the wall. It might not be as pretty. With calisthenics, it's tricky because if you want to then build on the skill, isn't it? That's where having the straighter back really comes in useful, because I don't know that you can as easily do a one-handed handstand with a banana back. So if you want to keep progressing and make it beautiful and do like a proper press handstand, then you're going to need to learn to do it nicely. But if you just want to be in a handstand, and then as long as you're not putting, undue stress on your back by being too arched, it's not the end of the world. Like that's taking your ego out of it, isn't it? It's like you do you. Like if you do the skill you want to do.
I've changed my mind considerably over the years when it comes to technique, because it's like, first and foremost, if it's safe, that's the biggest thing. It doesn't hurt your joints. You don't get pain. You're not getting some like muscle strain injury that you can't recover from. As long as if your technique is not causing that stuff, you're sweet. If it doesn't look absolutely pretty, that's fine, because with calisthenics, in some of these movements, you don't have the luxury of micro-loading or adjusting the intensity fractionally like that, where if your body just seeks that change in technique that maybe looks a little bit less optimal, but you can still do it, that's awesome. Because I personally plateau if I just try and keep absolutely strict form and never deviate from that. It's really difficult to increase your reps and apply progressive overload. Whereas like in reality, what actually happens when you're training, your technique's going to break down a bit. Your tempo will be a little bit quicker than being super slow, pauses, all this stuff, if you're actually pushing yourself.
Well, that's how in bodybuilding, that's kind of what you end up doing. Like say when I do these bicep drop sets, I end up doing cheek curls, and cheek curls, I'm using momentum to swing the dumbbell up slightly. I generate the momentum from my legs. So there's no issue, like not that it would break your back, but people are very anti, and when they see it,
it's stimulus to fatigue. What are you doing? That's just ego lifting.
Yeah, it's ego lifting, but it builds such a metabolic stress, and metabolic stress for me personally seems to be like the key ingredient for growth. So the way if I want to get big pecs, one of the best things I can do is really high rep push-ups with a short range of motion, like they do in prison, and that builds
the length and partials. Yep.
Yeah, they blow up like that, and it's length and partial. I use a very explosive cadence as well, and the time under tension, like the continuous time under tension, is massive. And I used to do that for like reps of 200, and that was when I had and that's what I went straight to bench press and had the really big bench press because I'd been doing that. And most people would say, that's BS.
Yeah, I wonder what the carryover is from that. Is it the muscle mass that you gain from those super high reps? Because you're entering definitely endurance territory with that. I wonder how that translated to the bench.
I could think maybe some of the neural pathways would be like I was performing the movement quite explosively, so I probably had good rate of force production, and that probably carried over to a good extent. And also, there isn't an endurance element, isn't there, to being able to be strong long enough. Like most of us can give one big burst, but to then maintain that strength as you push up. But yeah, there's lots of factors, and there's so many people who will tell you, well, this won't work or that won't work. And again, it's so individual, because that's what works for me personally. But actually, I think that kind of very high rep range calisthenics with a shorter range of motion, and I know this is sacrilege, I think it has got a really useful, not for your whole thing. And also in terms of tendon strength and things, we all know that tendons require a lot longer until they start strengthening compared to the muscles, which is why we see injuries in steroid users and things. Just getting that blood flow to the tendons over and over and over again. I've never had any injury in my pecs. I say, I wouldn't necessarily train like that if I went back and spoke to young Adam, because I also annihilated my shoulder range of motion by doing this.
Yeah, it's got to be as part of a whole picture. A great way to get the best of both worlds is you do full range of motion stuff until you reach technical failure. You can't fully extend your elbows on a push-up, and then you just stay in that bottom range. So you're not hindering lockout strength. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. That's a cheat set used to go past failure. And I say that I think And like you say, that's where you start building the muscle. And unfortunately, like you say, if you're being really strict with form, it's not going to be the big muscles that give up on you first. It's going to be, you just can't maintain that position because like one of the tiny supporting ones is gone. Or say for me, often it's even like controlling my breathing is one of the reasons I fall out. Or, with my handstand, I find I eventually underbalance. If I'm doing handstand push-ups, it's always an underbalance. And that's not, I think it's because I need to increase my speed in order to get through the movement at the end. And that always ends up pushing me back onto my feet. But the point is, you don't fail because you've reached muscle failure if you're using really good technique. But that's where then you can do both. Like we say, you do perfect technique and then you just hammer that muscle. And because you might not be doing perfect technique, but by doing this sort of compromised version of the movement, you're still essentially working at all the right combination of muscles in the right positions. And again, like alternatively, just doing a supported version of the movement you're trying to do once you reach failure. Like if you try and do as many handstand push-ups as you can, and then you reach failure, and then you continue with your legs now supported against the wall to kind of build the strength and the capacity.
That sounds brutal. I'm getting a bit scared of that if I was to do that workout right now.
We're talking like, again, there's a slight...
So we're talking about, drop set with, bicep curls is okay, but drop set with handstand push-ups, I don't know how many people would be able to tolerate that.
Well, if you're like me, then you're going to fail after 1 or 1.5.
But you still did the drop set, and that makes you hardcore.
But as in the point is, you can do that, and then you can also do something high. It doesn't even have to be done as a drop set, but you could do the skill at the start, and then you can do the higher rep range where you're, like you say, compromising form in a safe way. You're not going to really, again, like I say, that's quite advanced. You could do that, and then you could move on to pike push-ups, for example, for high rep ranges, which would be a safer option. Although pike push-ups are very tricky to get into when you're starting out. They're a very awkward movement, aren't they?
They are, yeah. Now, pain and injury is something that we'd all love to reduce the risk of getting. Talk to me more about tendon training, because you've done a lot of research on this. What are the best ways to improve our tendon resilience?
Well, I say actually, for me, like I really believe higher rep range, lower weight is like, it's just about getting blood there to start with, because you actually, through a process called angiogenesis, you actually create new blood vessels that become better at supplying the area with blood. And because tendons have lower blood flow to begin with, this can only help you out. So starting out with a light resistance but high repetition movement is a really good way to kind of fortify yourself for the future when you're starting to do much worse stuff. And obviously, I think one of the big guys to talk to on this front is Ben Patrick, knees over toes guy. And I in my last tendon video, I sort of interviewed him, discussed, and one of the things they talk about, which you don't really see in a lot of the sort of the marketing material, is short range movements and long range movements. And the short range is what I've discussed there, where you're doing shorter. I mean, you can even things like pulse squats, like short range of motion squats. And for people who have limited range of motion, I think this is gold. And for me, this has helped so many things. Like when I had a bad knee, just doing leg raises or lightweight, high repetition, just going through the movement. Don't work through pain.
This episode is sponsored by Fitness FAQs. Become a bodyweight beast with our calisthenics workouts. Use the coupon code podcast10 at checkout to save 10% off when shopping at fitnessfaqs.com. Don't miss this discount. Start training smarter and enjoy the gains. When you say short range, do you mean the inner range of motion, like the top of a bicep curl, the top of a squat, top of a bench press, the start?
I think they often talk about the shortened position, but I think you can actually, it's just a short range. It's just a short range of motion in the position but obviously you're not stretching yourself too far, because this is like building the foundation. So you're not going to be going in a very extended position, because like that's probably where you're in pain for most people.
Yeah.
So
no hyperextension of the joints.
Yeah, exactly. But then when you've built that capacity, what they then talk about is then you go into the long range motion, which is full range of motion, but specifically, into the more extended position. So that's where they do their ATG split squats, for example, where they're going really knees over toes. And, I really like sissy squats and that kind of thing. So, when he does his walking backwards, I don't know if you've seen him do this, he'll do backwards walking for loads and loads. That's basically a very short range motion, for the knees over toes position, where it's just repeating it over and over, very light resistance, getting blood flowing there, and then moves on to things that are much more difficult. And it's that combination that kind of sees you through the whole range of motion on the tendons. But yeah, for me, it's that. And it's just also being aware of like, because I think you can be too strong for your own good sometimes. And I think this is something that I suffered with, because I think I always had like a relatively natural, propensity for strength training, but I didn't necessarily have the technique and I didn't necessarily have the experience to begin with. So like, just because you can press, 75 kilograms overhead doesn't mean you should. You need to have the good form, and you need to like have built up the capacity, like I say, so like be used to doing that motion over and over again. And again, this is very individual and it's knowing yourself, but it's when you go into those positions you're not familiar with, that, you might bend your back a little bit too much, or you might move your arms a bit too far behind your head and you didn't plan to do it, and you're normally fine. But when you get into that position that you're not used to, that's when you're going to injure yourself, and you can't really account for that. And again, that's why steroid users have injuries, because the muscles grow super fast, but they don't have necessarily the experience, and they don't necessarily have the same the tendons aren't strengthening at the same rate, and so they're more likely to tear something. It's a bit like when Captain Ginrai gets Goku's body and he's got all of his strength, but he doesn't have his experience. And so something that I do now if I train people is I consider the first few weeks just learning and building capacity before you do anything else. Like, I don't think you should necessarily even expect to be aiming to make big gains in your first few weeks if it's a new training program, because you need to make sure you're doing all the movements correctly and safely. And if you're really rounding your back, like a little bit of butt wink on a squat isn't the end of the world, but if it's really rounding and you're sort of like this, like adding more and more volume isn't going to help you, it's going to hurt you. So you need to focus on that first.
The key to highlight there is that if there's any sudden jump in weight lifted, or entering a range of motion that you're not familiar with, or using a speed that you're also not familiar with, all those things are recipes for aches, pains, niggle, and also injury. Whereas if you just gradually increase the weight, closer towards your 3-rep max, if you're trying to express your strength, or just gradually extending the range of motion further, if that's something you want to do in your training, that is the way that you reduce bad stuff from happening. When injury happens, it's always, I am not feeling confident with this. I haven't gone anywhere close to this range of motion or this weight lifted, but YOLO, I'm going to try it anyway. You're more likely to screw something up.
Yeah, that's it. And I think there's always, I've always said, like, even if you're the most careful person in the world, the best athlete in the world, there'll be points where you're tired and you slip and you're going to go into those ranges of motion. And the best thing you can do is, so like, again, it's the argument of like perfect form. Well, actually having a bit of worse form, in quotation marks, with a lighter weight can be good for you, because it means that if you get into that position, like you're kidding yourself, you think you're going to do every rep perfectly, and no matter how good you are, you're going to sometimes do a bad deadlift. And that's why some people are saying that occasionally rounding your back isn't the end of the world, because with the lighter weight, because then when you accidentally round your back a little bit, I say when you're loading a pushchair into a car, that was the example JC Santana used, and it's 100% true. You can't use good form to do this. The boot's in the way. It's an awkward shape. Like, you're going to be in these funny positions. And
sorry, honey, I can't lift our newborn without using a perfectly neutral spine, hip hinge.
Exactly.
You're going to have to do it for me.
Yeah, exactly. So that's where something like a kettlebell training, for example, can come in quite handy, because you're using a lighter weight in more unpredictable positions, and things like Jefferson curls for rounding the back. And again, you're going much, much lighter weight, but you're just giving yourself that little bit of wiggle room for if you're going to get something slightly wrong, because you will, And also, on the same vein, I've always tried to say, like, don't be ashamed of injuring yourself, because it doesn't mean you are necessarily being silly. It is unavoidable.
Yeah, because some people would say, "Oh, X person got injured. That doesn't make them a good coach or a good person at training," which is not right.
No, it's not. I'm injured all the time, and I do stupid things, partly because of the nature of my job. Like, I'll be out filming and I really want to do a handspring over this thing, and I'm tired and I know I shouldn't, but it's like I want the shot, so I do it. So
it's worth it for that B-roll to stand the test of time.
Sometimes it's worth it. I have had like a year-long recovery from one of my stupid moves.
I just hope the camera was on for that particular one that you got injured.
Yeah, but it wasn't even good. I had a back spasm, which I was dealing with for a while. They're gone now. I've finally fixed them. But at the time, I was having a back spasm, and then I was like, I'm so close to finishing this shoot today. I'm going to do the squat, even though I've had the back spasm. And I don't think I need to tell you that was completely stupid. And I knew it was stupid. So I'm just sharing this to say that, injuries happen. And I think anyone who pretends that they never get injured is either not being entirely honest, or maybe they're not really sort of pushing themselves that much, which, maybe that's the way to be. I don't know, but
not doing these aggressive overload jumps in terms of weight lifted, trying some new exercise that that you shouldn't really be attempting. Because if you do that stuff, you might be dealing with an injury that is going to set you back for a long time. Whereas inevitably, as you said, if you're training hard, you're pushing yourself, you're trying to do everything perfect, you will get some pain. You might get a little injury or a niggle or something, but at least then, because you've been somewhat sensible, mindful, and being present with your training, it won't set you back so much that you can't just make some slight modification. Instead of lifting heavy on your weighted calisthenics, you drop your weights by half, or you just do bodyweight calisthenics, or you find a substitute movement pattern that doesn't cause you the pain.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, it's not necessarily can you do it. It's like, can you do it safely? Should you do it? Like I say, you can your strength can kind of outpace your technique sometimes, and it can outpace your capacity in other areas. And so, like, even just being very tired is going to cause a kind of, it's going to impair a lot of your form and things, and being very stressed. So just, I mean, personally, these days, my days of doing like 1 rep maxes are quite behind me. But again, it comes to age and things. I used to think I was invincible. I used to do, again, going back to my masochistic days of bodybuilding, my friend and I would do bench press, and we'd start on our 1 rep max, and we'd do a pyramid set where basically the other guy was doing 90% of the lifting. And like I was scared from I was scared for my life, and we'd be laughing hysterically. We're having a great time, but I couldn't see what could go wrong. And now I'm under there if I'm on my own at the gym, and I'm like, if your shoulder goes, and it has done in the past, luckily never under a bench press, but I'm like, it could happen. And then what are you going to do? Suddenly, being a bit older, you see all the things that can go wrong. And I'm not trying to scare people, but I'm just saying, especially as you get older, you do need to be careful and sensible. And say it might be hardcore or a laugh or whatever, but when you then can't bench press for a year, it's not quite as funny.
Speak to me about auto-regulation, because clearly with, life getting busier, if you don't have much time or your responsibilities change, maybe you become a parent or you start a university degree, you won't be able to work out as much or as hard as you used to. What advice do you have for people just managing this like on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, well, I think, again, unfortunately, a lot of it comes down to like removing ego and knowing your limits and just playing the long game instead of the short game. For me, as a parent right now, like I've tried so many times to stick to a really good program, and there's so many things for me that get in the way. Like as a parent, like this is something that like it's game changing, because you go home after you've been doing whatever you've been doing, and you don't get to sit down. Like you've got to play with the kids. Your partner's probably been playing with them all day if they stay at home, or they've been cooped up at school or whatever, and you basically need to look after them. You need to make dinner, you need to bath them, and then when they go to bed at like 9 or 10, if they're being naughty, you then have got to tidy the house because you've done no chores in this time. Like there's no downtime. And then they keep bringing sickness bugs back home from school, so we get vomiting bugs. I had COVID at the start of this month, and then I had this headache that lasted for like really up to the start of this month. I was doing really well. I was making lots of gains in various areas. Then we went on a holiday, a couple of holidays. That was a planned break. And then straight after that, COVID, with this like headache that lingered for like a week. And then an extremely busy period of work. That was an unplanned break. And it's just...
So you thinking that you're going to stick to a 8-week program where you can linearly apply progressive overload, have the consistency of same day, same rest day, seems like that's not really a reality.
Yeah, and that might sound like, especially as someone who, like, people say, well, your career is fitness, so of course you can do it. But I pick up my kids from school, I go and get them at lunch, and then filming on top is actually, like yesterday, we were filming for the whole day, and I was crawling along walls, and I was jumping off walls, and I was doing break falls and like handstands, and then like, what is that in terms of my program? Like my shoulders are tired and my lats ache. I don't even know why. I didn't do anything with my lats.
It's the dilemma of being a content creator, where the filming doesn't always support the actual training practice.
That's right. And then my ankle hurts because I was the week before I was making a video about foot strength. So I was just doing loads and loads of barefoot pistol squats and stuff, which just
Yeah,
in
yeah.
greater volume than I would ever do as part of a workout, you know, just 'cause to get the shot.
That's something I want to mention is important for people that start something new. Any novel exercise that you do, please take it easy and use some restraint. So for myself as well, this week I filmed a video on length and partials, you know, the importance of training the bottom range for, you know, hypertrophy benefits. You guys have got to watch the video on Fitness FAQs when it comes
I'll
out.
be watching.
But case in point, I was doing chest flies, you know, I did
yeah.
maybe 15 total repetitions with like 8s in each hand. And I was sore for, I'm not kidding, 5 days in my chest. And that's coming from someone that can do, you know, like 60 kilo dips for like 3 sets of 12. So case in point, if you're going to do something new, you'll remember my words, just restrain yourself.
Yeah, 100%. But yeah, so in terms of how do you auto-regulate in that? I'm just trying to say I know where people are coming from. First of all is like, I guess have some like, again, a lot of it is knowing the stimulus, like think in terms of like, for me, like I say, I know how to get a quick, powerful stimulus on my biceps. And if I know I'm coming up to a very busy period, like I recently switched to just like a really basic bodybuilding bro split just for like a week because I just wanted to get some good stimulus in whilst I knew I wasn't going to be working on any skills. I knew I wasn't going to be like, I had no time for anything. I just had like 3 really short sessions. I'm like, what can I do in this time? It's not like I'm going to lose all the skills in the meantime. It's just like, how can I feel like I'm still making progress? But yeah, so in terms of like, it's knowing that you're not always going to go up at a consistent rate, but as long as you're getting, I say, think in terms of stimulus, like, so if you can't do your bench press, like as much this week as you would have liked, and you can't you follow your progression, at least do some push-ups because you're still stimulating the pecs and you can do them kind of anywhere and for any time. And the thing is that I learned from doing this is like, actually, again, this is where my approach is a bit different now because I'm no longer as interested in increasing my bench press or necessarily even gaining the skill because this is my life. This is what I do. I film these weird things, and I was filming with a film crew the other day and they were getting me to like jump down things multiple times for like multiple takes, and that's actually closer to the, like, you know, if you've watched my channel much, I'm very inspired by superheroes and like you know, action heroes, anime. So but that's how they are. Like if you're out in a battle, you're not going to be stopping on the spot doing reps and sets. You're going to be facing so many unknown challenges.
Oh, sorry, I've got to rest for 3 minutes for that full ATP.
Yeah, exactly. And I always say about this about Batman. He's going to chase someone across the rooftop, jump across the roof. So he's already used cardio and power, and then he's going to have to wrestle them. You know, you're using all these different skills at once. And actually, if you think of that as the goal and the stimulus, then in a way, the fact that you can't progress linearly is not necessarily a bad thing. As long as you're getting like stimulus in lots of areas, as long as you're getting some cardio, some strength training, you're not getting worse. I say you're still learning. And I say that's something I'm more interested in many ways at the moment is learning. And yeah, and as well I've created a system where I have a best case workout, a not so good workout, and an emergency workout, and then I have
that's fantastic. That is a great
workout,
takeaway.
An office workout, a version of each of these, and a field workout. Like I can work out in my garden, I can work out in my living room. If I've got half an hour in my living room, I'll just be doing some pike push-ups, some push-ups, a little bit of hand balancing maybe, and I'll do pull-ups on my bar outside. If I've got like an hour at the gym, then I might spend a lot more time like doing some proper skills training, then end with some like simple compound lifts. So whatever it is, I can adjust to the situation I'm in. And I say from experience, knowing for myself what I need to do to get that minimum stimulus, it really helps with that because my emergency workout is still decent, you know. But again, that's going to come with personal experience.
Something is better than nothing. Still being consistent with replacements and knowing that there's an inverse relationship between if you can only train 2 or 3 days a week versus your normal 6. If you can go a little bit harder in that 2 or 3 sessions than you normally would in terms of intensity and volume, and it'll balance out in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, and knowing what your priorities are as well, I think is really useful because for me, like I've got all this accessory stuff that I'm interested in. Like I do want to have more mobile hips. I do want to, you know, learn a one-armed pull-up, but they're not as important to me as just like for my job, I need to maintain a decent level of muscle. And say I'm more interested in the hand balancing at the moment. So like if I can only do a couple of things, that's what I'll do. And then if I've got extra time, then I'll work on the other stuff as well. And as well, for me, something I talk about a lot on my channel is breaking my workouts up a lot. Like I've got like, I'll sometimes do like chest in the morning, legs in the evening, or I might do, I have a very simple mobility routine that I do most days. But the fact that that's not tacked onto my workout means that's much easier to make sure I get in almost every day. And that's like, I call that my old man training. That's my keep your body working workout. But again, unfortunately, it makes it more complicated because I'm not just saying follow this, but that makes my workouts much more adaptable because I have different bits I can do depending on the situation I'm in. I know what my priorities are. I know what's essential. So the old man's training is the only thing which we don't mess with, because if I want my back to be good, I got to do my old man training.
Yeah, I find the exact same thing as well. If I'm strapped for time, I just choose the biggest bang for buck exercises that are going to have the most transfer, that can be, the biggest range of motion stuff that I can really load up, that challenge my body. We're talking like deadlifts, overhead press, pull-ups, those things. If I do those regularly, then all the other stuff, if I can't do my strength skills or whatever, when I come back to those, I know that I've put my body in a good position to be sweet with that. Whereas if I didn't have much time and I'm only really fluffing around with easy stuff, I can't guarantee that I'll have the same robustness and transferability.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, maintain the sort of basics, the foundation. But and in terms of you saying go for the biggest bang for your buck, a little tip I found if you want a really quick workout is find one station. You kind of like underestimate the amount of time you spend faffing going from one thing to another, or talking to people, or thinking what I'm going to do next, or queuing. If you go to like the cables, you can get a good workout in there. Especially if you do a split. If you're just doing chest, like just go and do like 10 sets of 10 bench press. Like that is an excellent workout. And because you're cutting all of the thinking, all of the moving between things, loading, like we will have to lower the weight probably.
Technique, ramping up to everything. Exactly.
Yeah. If you go and find one station, that's a really good way to get a quick workout in. And I think as well, if you're not used to it, you'll find you can get a significant DOMS the next day just from the pure focus of that.
And there's the focus of it allows you to channel your effort, and you'd be surprised how much you can do. And the whole COVID situation really highlighted this because people, searched, how do I work out at home? They found calisthenics for the first time, all the people that usually go to the gym, and they actually did their push-ups with a lot of volume and a lot of effort. And they're like, man, this is really good. And it's no surprise that you don't need a ton of exercises. It's just, I think the industry is really selling this on us because it's like gyms have got incentives to push machines because that's their point of differentiation as a business model. Because, if all we needed was a squat rack and some plates, the business model wouldn't be viable. And the whole like flashiness of doing new exercises all the time and whatnot, it's great, but you don't need it.
Yeah. So the simplicity. So one of my favorite workouts is just pull-ups, push-ups, air squats. If I say today I'm going to do 75 pull-ups, I'm going to do 200 push-ups, and I'm going to do 150 air squats, you can tell that where my strengths lie. Then I just break that up into as many sets and reps as necessary. If I do that, that is a killer workout. If you do that several times a week, most people are going to get insane growth from that. I'm not saying the numbers have to be the same for you, but whatever you set it as, set yourself a time limit with shorter rest times, you've got an even crazier workout. And to me, as someone who wants to address everything, I'm all into my rotational strength and everything, you're not going to get all that. But as a foundation, and then you can work on the other stuff, like I say, more so as a skill, then that's, for a lot of people, that's a brilliant starting point. That's in fact what I've recommended to a lot of people as a starting point. And then the other thing is, obviously not with those numbers. And then the other thing is, I think a lot of what we want, you can just get from just doing sports. Like, I think if a lot of people did swimming, football, maybe some rock climbing as a hobby, or, choose any three, like a bit of dancing, a bit of yoga, and a bit of, hand balancing, you're going to get so much. Like, if for a lot of people who just want abs and fitness, just playing football or playing tennis will probably get you there if you have a good diet. And again, I'm not saying it's a scam, but like you say, the incentives of the fitness industry are to push all this. And that's also the problem, again, with the specialization, because I think so much of the advice on YouTube is like, I am the bodybuilding channel, I am the powerlifting channel. So you're interested in getting into fitness, you go to one of these because that's what comes up when you search. You end up getting into like that world. Now suddenly you're ignoring so many aspects of your fitness, like perhaps cardio, or maybe if you found a running channel now, you're ignoring strength. And then you're comparing yourself to, this creator and that community, trying to get better and better at that one thing. And suddenly you do need to start like optimizing and honing in. And that's where all of these accessory lifts become necessary and all this equipment, because to get to that elite level, you do need to be like that. But like I say, actually, for a lot of people, just football, you're having fun, you're getting cardio, there's a little bit of resistance training there. And, if you have a good diet as well, you're going to be way healthier than you were before, and probably healthier than 75% of people. And if you can pick a good selection of sports and interests that kind of complement each other, because obviously football is very cardio focused and very leg focused. You do some swimming for your pulling exercise, and maybe some heavy bag work for something a bit more chest and triceps. I mean, that's sufficient for a lot of people, and it really simplifies things. And you don't even need to be the best at those things. You just need to have fun, and voila, you're fit.
That's the challenge of wanting to become like well-rounded in a few domains, is that the cultures become echo chambers. And if you say are doing calisthenics and you want to lift weights, it can be seen as, whoa, what's going on here? Whereas you're just using multiple tools to just make yourself strong and resilient. That's, something that I've, found quite difficult, as you said, is just you don't become the best at any one domain. Each of the cultures can be quite specialized, and there's less of a acceptance universally for just working out, for a lack of a better word.
Yeah, that's it. And doing what's fun for you. And as someone who likes to kind of target every little area, I do get a bit more sort of sciencey about it personally. But a lot of what I find is that it's impossible to chase every little thing, because I was doing a video on training your foot muscles the other day, and there's all these things you can do, like wear toe spacers, and you can do foot shortening exercise, and you can pick up balls with your feet, etc., which is all great. But like, how many people are really going to do that? And then they're also going to do all the same stuff for their grip strength, and then they're also going to do all the same stuff for their neck strength.
Then you've got this laundry list of exercises, and it's like same thing when you get injured or you're rehabbing, prehabbing. It's like, how long do I have to keep doing these rotator cuff exercises for, and this hip abduction? It's like it's really overwhelming.
Exactly, and what I've found is that actually the best way to get most of these things is almost by osmosis. And the problem is that our fitness is so prescribed and generic. So like, if you go to the gym and you're just doing like these linear lifts, you might get very strong in those areas, but you're not doing anything for your foot strength or your ankle strength. And so you still do twist your ankle when you go out for a run. Whereas if you do like trail running barefoot, and again, absolutely build up to this, it's not a good idea for someone new. I say wear minimal shoes and start off as a very light jog for short distance on flat grass. But as you build up to it, you build all those foot muscles without even thinking about it, because you have to, because you're balancing your feet, because they're splaying and they're changing shape according to the ground. And it's the same with so many other things. If you're playing football and you're cutting and changing direction and running, you're improving your hip mobility in like this gentle and natural way in all of these different angles that you're not expecting. So actually, in some ways, you're the better athlete than the guy who's insanely strong or whatever, because you're more adaptable. And if it came to like playing a sport or moving furniture or doing anything that's realistic, you might actually end up outperforming the guy who's dedicated their life and their personality to fitness.
Another great example about that is, say, people that want to do bodybuilding and they take it to the extreme. They use straps on literally every pulling exercise. Well, if you want to have, function, we'll use that word, you got to have some element of grip strength. So just by doing your pulling exercise without straps, you'll hypertrophy your forearms, you'll increase your crushing grip. Granted, you won't be able to, take your back to absolute muscular failure on everything if you don't use straps.
Yeah.
But this is just another way of thinking about, okay, how can I still do training but get tangible side benefits, running barefoot, doing pulling exercise without straps and stuff like that.
And that's the point where often the things that would make you elite are actually, ironically, the things that are making you less capable overall as a all-rounder.
Oh, that's a mic drop there.
Yeah, well, it nicely ties everything back, doesn't it, in a way? But yeah, and that's it. And I personally really have this like spiky reaction whenever anyone says, "Why are you doing that? That's silly. That's the wrong way to do it. Like, you're not going to make any serious gains, or that's not optimal." And then it's like, well, yeah, but you're kind of thinking through this very narrow lens of the thing you've always done. And perhaps it's not optimal, but you don't know what my goals are or what my aims are. And so, I don't know, as someone, I've always been the opposite. When I don't like getting into the culture of something, and when I start to feel like people are telling me now what I can and can't do and what doesn't count, or, well, that's not impressive because you didn't do it this way. And I've always felt like this natural, like, I don't like that. And I've said, well, I'm just, all right, I won't share my stuff anymore.
It's hard because it's human nature, because even myself, when I'm in a gym, if I look at someone and I'm seeing something I've never seen before, in the past, I'd be very judgmental, like, oh, what the hell are they doing? Just use a full range of motion, lift some heavier weights. And then it dawned on me, okay, I came across a video, they're doing that for athletic development. They're trying to improve their power, speed, for jumping. And on the other side, I could see a bodybuilder training and they're using a certain amount of technique, but you don't know if they're injured. You don't know if this is their last rep that you're looking at. So you got to take things like with a grain of salt like that.
Yeah, and again, with the ego, I'm always like, when I'm sort of at the end of my drop set or whatever, I want to say to people passing by, like, this is my last set. You should have seen what I did on my first set.
I'm lifting, 5s on the bicep curl.
Yeah, but and that's where, like, to be able to, like, remove yourself from that sort of, like, social judgment and stuff and do the thing that you actually want to do that's actually good for you, instead of, like, always worrying about, like, say, is this optimal? Does it look good? Etc. Like, I've sort of been trying to coin this phrase lately, which I'm going to be doing more on the channel, which is movement punk, which is basically, taking that approach to your training where, you're not following a set dogma, but rather just moving in every way that you can. And, I really like the movement culture, like the whole sort of, Edu Portal and Animal Flow and stuff, and all that stuff's really good. But I think even with that, you can end up a little bit like I don't know, like elitist in terms of like what is a good movement. Like these guys are all doing these beautiful flows, and like, what about tennis? That's also movement. All movement is completely valid. And actually, in many ways, the more random it is, the more it kind of prepares you for any eventuality. Like, it's not always about the aesthetics, or it's so hard. Like you say, as you progress, it's natural to end up competing and comparing and sort of categorizing. But I think it often does us more of a disservice.
That's a pill that you have to swallow if you want to do multiple domains of fitness, is that this is just going to be a reality. Not everyone's going to see that you want to do some strength, some muscle building, some cardio, lifting some weights, doing calisthenics, maybe a martial art. Usually people tend to do one or the other. But then there is a demographic of people that, especially those that have been training, what would you say, like more than 5 years? Most people tend to be like, I want to dabble in something else.
Yeah, because everyone's tolerance is different, but when you start to get to sort of that point, unless you are kind of like leading the field, you might
earning
well
money from it or something like that.
You might well find you start to get burned out on that one thing. There's only so much, you can. Everything's got unlimited depth, but think what else you could discover if you try something new.
I think the biggest thing with physical activity now, especially for me, is the mental health benefits. Take away the PRs, take away the aesthetics, take away the strength. It's just, when I exercise, I feel better. I'm a better friend. I'm a better partner. I'm better for my business. I can think more clearly. It's what I value above all else.
It's huge for me as well. Yeah, I really find, like I say, when I had this like COVID headache for a while, it was unfortunate because it was whenever I exerted myself. So if I tried to do even a push-up, I got this pain here. It happened even from a sneeze or a cough. So it really impaired my ability to work out. Obviously, that didn't help in itself, but I'm just moodier. I'm more sluggish, lethargic. And I find if I go through a week and a half of not training or longer, it becomes really hard to get back on that train, and every effort becomes harder. But if I'm in a phase where I'm working out, I have just a much better baseline of energy, and it only takes 1 or 2 workouts to get me back to my old self. But like, and that's again where it's really useful to have like a gentle workout. Be like, look, man, we're not going to do anything crazy, but can I just convince your body to give me some like gentle stretches with some decent music on? And normally that's all it takes to then be like, whilst I'm at it, I'll do some hand balancing, or whilst I'm at it, I'll do some push-ups, and like, I'm back.
It's like the feeling of dreading going to the gym, the commute and stuff, like switching gears from work to training. But then 10 times out of 10, you're going to feel good once you get there and you start going.
Yeah, you do. And that's again, if your goal is just to get moving, get blood flowing, rather than your goal being to like achieve this specific thing, just to, let's say, if you're in that headspace, if you're just like struggling to get back on the horse, just like go with the aim of enjoying yourself and just see what happens. It makes a really big difference. I think there's a huge difference between being like tired, which a lot of us kind of think we are, versus lethargic. And a lot of the time you're kind of more so lethargic, which is just like, yeah, maybe mentally tired, but not physically tired. Maybe if you've been sitting in an office all day, like, and you come home and you're tired, it's like, you can't be physically tired. So actually the thing you feel like you need, which is to sit down in front of the TV, might be the opposite of what you need, which is to get some blood flowing now, and to, like, you're tired because your whole body has been in like this suppressed state for like a whole day. Like, and then if you're just going to go home and then like listen to sad music and sit like this or watch junk TV, you're just going to be more lethargic. And then the next day when it's hard to get out of the bed and you can't feel bothered to work out, and you're like, why not? Having a dance, this is a hack. Put on some really good music whilst you're cleaning the kitchen. It's such a good way of like, and have a bop. It's a really good way
Adam,
to get your
I'm
energy
going to need
again.
a YouTube video of the optimal technique, the benefits of how to dance correctly for men over 30.
Oh dear, I don't think the technique is certainly not something I would be recommending to
That's
anybody.
not for online consumption.
Yeah, but as a tip, I think it's actually really good. If I've got really low energy, you kind of always find yourself in this momentum where you want to continue the low energy. I always find if you're sad, you put on sad music. If you're tired, you put on quiet music. Well, actually, if you're tired, put on something a bit jolly and have a little bop, and you'll feel way more energetic, like in no time at all. They say the ultimate playlist is one that starts with a slower tempo and then builds up the tempo as you go. That's the best way to have a gym workout, and I find that's effective. But yeah, as in, if you lean into the tiredness, then you're just going to feel more tired. But actually, if you just get a bit of movement of any sort, you very quickly find that actually that was what you needed. And when the blood's flowing again, your heart rate's up again, you got a little bit more adrenaline in you, suddenly, you come alive again.
What about biohacking? Is this worth the time and cost to do?
Well, obviously it depends on the biohack, but I've found that biohacking has become a little bit of a dirty word for me personally. I mean, without getting too sort of political or stuff, there's a lot of like, grifting going on, isn't there, with like things
vested
that
interests. Yep.
Vested interests, things that make the most marginal difference, according to some study that was done on rats 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And so by this, and I always again think like, there are supplements for your focus, there are supplements for your energy, there's supplements for your testosterone, for your growth hormone, for your sleep. Are you really going to take all of these forever? The answer is probably not. Whereas just a good diet will take care of 90% of that stuff, because you're getting those same nutrients probably. Like, I mean, if you look at like most of the people who are top performers throughout history, they probably weren't taking ashwagandha or whatever else. And I'm not saying it can't work or whatever, but I'm just saying
Winston Churchill was making decisions.
Or Usain Bolt or whatever, like they probably did it on a mostly normal diet, and so can you. Like, and you can't do all these perfect things optimally. And I mean, I was really interested in this stuff because I'm the pioneer, and like I want to learn how to optimize the human body. So of course I'm interested in seeing in the dark and having greater awareness and focus and, boosting my testosterone and stuff. But in fact, you can't do all these things if you've got any kind of commitment, and you'd have to pick and choose, and just the gains are so marginal. And 99% of the time, you're going to get something way better just from working out smarter, and also just like, again, it's becoming your whole personality, isn't it? Where everything's optimized, and there is such an important role for chilling with your mates or hanging out with your wife and eating a box of chocolates on the sofa. And like,
yeah, that's the toxic downside of the productivity movement, because you don't hear enough of that stuff, which in reality makes a good life. And that's the ultimate biohacking: is good nutrition, social relationships, sound sleep, sunlight, walking. Those things are free. Anyone can do it. And they're going to have significantly bigger returns than some small biohack that you can do.
Yeah, exactly. And everything is demonized, like video games, like, junk TV, like, comic books, whatever it is that you enjoy, just do that as well, because like, you only live once. And I always say you should train to live and not live to train. So your training should be the sound
that's good. Yeah.
But like, if it's not only that it's like your whole personality, it's also just because what ultimately is the goal. I also always say, like, is your goal to be in amazing elite shape for 5 months? Because if it is, then sure, do all this stuff. But if you want to maintain this forever, like, just be realistic with yourself. Just be honest with yourself. Are you going to... I don't know anyone who starts one of these supplements. I've never met anyone, and then they did it forever, like these biohacking supplements. all
It's
of them.
always, I did
They're
this
like,
for 28 days and I got this.
yeah, that's the YouTube thumb. But even like your friends or whatever, they get all excited about it. Oh, this is boosting my testosterone, which is amazing. And then like 10, like, oh, I feel stronger. I'm looking better. Like it might be placebo, or maybe they have boosted their testosterone by like 0.1%. But whatever the case, they'll just quietly stop doing it because it's costing them money. It's not really seeing any tangible results. Testosterone is the worst one because it's so marketed towards guys who want to be alpha. It's not really all about the health, is it? They want to be like, they think they're going to walk into a room and women are going to go like,
it sells the dream of the confidence and the status that you acquire from having that elevated testosterone.
Exactly. You're going to be rich. You're going to be sexy. You're going to be driving a Lamborghini within a week, and it's
with
like
5 women around you.
Yeah, and the only reason to do any of those things, anyways, is to impress other guys. Let's be honest, and it's a trap. Like nobody, like,
Facts.
Would you have more fun? Like, I would never want. Like, everyone's entitled to their own goals, but as a non-car person, I was told this story somewhere else. I put like water into the oil. No, I put oil into the coolant of my car. Like, and had to go take it to the garage. Like, if I had a Lamborghini, I'd just be stressed all the time. Like, I don't know. Again, it's like the internet suggesting what you should want rather than you thinking, maybe I'd rather stay at home and actually just play some, like at the moment I'm playing Deus Ex. Like, you don't always have to be on. You just have to do what you enjoy. And like for me personally, I really enjoy human performance. I find it fascinating, and like it comes from a nerdy place. So I'm always like, I think there was a danger at one point on my channel where I was like, I didn't want to be that guy, like the sort of saying, do all this stuff. Like if you're not training, then you're not, you're wussing out or whatever. I'm like, I'm do this for fun, and I think you should just do it if you like it. Obviously a certain level of fitness and health is really important, but do it in a way that you enjoy and you have fun with, and you don't have to grind. And I just think a lot of these people that optimize every single part of their lives might be miserable.
Or just lying.
Yeah, or lying. Yeah, or lying. But yeah, and then it's not so much the people promoting it. I might be lying, but then I think a lot of people earnestly follow all this advice and think that in order to be happy, they need to do all these things. And it's actually like, well, the thing that would make you happy is just like, over there. This is in your room. It's cereal. Like, just chill out a little bit.
Wise words, mate. Thank you so much for your time. Where can people find out more about your stuff, Adam?
Well, the main source, of course, is YouTube. It's the Bioneer. I'm also on Instagram and TikTok, though not as much as I am on YouTube. I've got a website, thebioneer.com, and I've got a couple of books. If you search Adam Chernitsky in Amazon, they'll come up. So, yeah, I've got some cool stuff coming to the channel quite soon, which I can't really talk about yet, but hopefully...
Stay tuned. Fantastic.
Yeah, stay tuned. Random tease. No, thank you. It's been a great chat again.
No worries, man. See ya.